I hear an echo. Can we do something about the technical possibilities? Can you hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, honorable guests and participants of the conference, thank you for the opportunity to open this international, thus multilingual event. And most importantly, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the consortium of the universities from France, Germany, Sweden, Portugal, Romania, Poland, Spain, and Lithuania, of course, for the project theme, which is digital technology, challenges and opportunities for autonomous language learning and teaching for the intercultural communication. I think that it's a very recent scene that again brings us back to the topic of the languages. Language policies are directly affected by technologies that offer extended resources for teaching and learning, furthermore for knowledge exchange. But on the other hand, teachers and learners benefit from all the internet, social media, education technologies, and easy access to multilingual resources. And all these technologies bring challenges. I hope that this conference is devoted not only to disseminate the project results, but also to discuss how universities, teachers, and individual learners could use technologies for the best, and also have strategies how to deal with those challenges. Teaching and learning is only one aspect of language policies, but in terms of languages, each linguistic group sees the language as part of identity. So languages are also part of culture and national and international identity. Increasingly, though, more and more people have bilingual or multilingual identity. So I am sure that speakers of this conference will also include the topics of the societal needs, but also societal benefits of the languages that we learn, speak, and teach. In the context of recent political developments in the world, in terms of the Russia's war against Ukraine, linguistic and cultural scenes need professionals to speak of the issues that appear in the linguistic and cultural world. I mean that languages are in constant competition, which is unfair, I think. Within an individual who is a learner or who is a teacher, languages help to have the integrity of the identity. But sometimes in universities policies, in school policies, languages are in competition because of the lack of resources. Today you will speak of technologies, but you will also probably have done lots of research how these technologies include all the languages, all the multilingual scene of the world, and how learners who have languages at a different capacity or at a different level can use all those internet, social media resources to get the knowledge. Languages are the tool. Languages are most often the tool for thinking, the tool for learning, the tool for getting the knowledge. And today, languages are inseparable of the media literacy. So I hope that universities and the project partners of this project tackle with data and research the challenges that appear not only in the learning and teaching schemes, not only in the contexts when teachers and learners together use the languages as a tool, but also how languages could help and benefit social integrity, but also individual identity. So I personally am looking forward to all the presentations in this conference, and will look into the project which has reached its final stage for the resources and for the probably recommendations that might be helpful in the recent situations, in the recent teaching and learning contexts to both learners and teachers. I wish everyone to enjoy the conference and use the networking opportunity that the hosting university, Mykolos Romeris University, offers for all participants. I think it's really symbolic that this conference could be called a hybrid conference. It's another example of how technologies and internet helps to connect people. And as a last suggestion or wish to international participants who decided to attend this conference physically, I wish to enjoy multilingual and multicultural Vilnius and look for the signs that might add to the data for the linguistic environment where the universities function. So have a great day. And my voice is going bad. So sorry for that.
Thank you, Vilma, so much. I know that you have a linguistic background, so that's why your speech was very inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we continue with our keynote speaker, Annick Rivens-Mompien, who is going to present the main ideas, the main results, everything about the project. The title is Dial for You, Have We Managed to Bridge the Gap Between Formal and Informal Language Learning, Results and Prospects? Okay, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm going to go on. He has explained everything to me, but you know, I prefer not to press the wrong button.
I think it's on. Just ask if anyone sees
Yeah,
it.
can you see me on screen, or how do we know if they see me? And can you hear me?
They can definitely hear you. Can you see the presentation, if anyone can confirm?
In the chat, maybe, or with the thumb up.
This one's yours, yeah?
Yeah.
They should see it.
Okay. Yeah, you see it on screen. And okay, thank you very much. And I hope everyone can hear me here and online. Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here for this final step of the project, because it means we've worked together, we've learned a lot together, and now we are here to present the results. So, and to present maybe the main results. But first of all, I will go a little backward, reminding the goals of the project, because we're not just the members. So, well, the Dial for You members know that, but I will remind the goals. and see how we dealt with it. And I will also refer to the theoretical framework on which we relied, so that guided our reflection and our choices. I will go through the main results briefly because our partners are also going to go into more details, so I'll try not to spoil everything, but just giving a teasing rather than spoiling. And I will conclude with the questions that we need to ask now about the sustainability of the project. How is it going to continue, and what choices we have made for the future, or at least at this final step of the project. So it has already been said, we are 8 partners, and of course I'm speaking today, but I'm speaking in the name of the 8 partners because we worked together, and it was really, I will go back to that in the conclusion. I think it was a really fruitful work, and it's important that this kind of project can exist because we have learned a lot one from the others. The background, just as a reminder, we started 2 years ago. We thought we were at the end of the COVID period, and in fact we were in the middle of it. And we had this call for proposal, and the question was about renewing language learning and teaching in time of COVID-19. So our project, we considered that we needed to take into account the changes that had happened during this period, with, of course, the increasing use of digital technologies, but a gap, which is my question today, to fully support high quality and inclusive education, because we didn't master all the technical tools, we were far one from another, so there were several gaps to be solved. And we also found out that learners by themselves managed to develop new strategies to bridge the gap, not to feel lonely, and we needed to know what had been going on. This was the starting question to build the project. So we thought it would be important to facilitate mediation in all dimensions of the language learning process, and also to include formal and informal situations of learning, because the learners, as they were missing some, I would say, presence at universities, looked for other resources to compensate. So it was important for us to deal with that, and it's also a general trend, apart from COVID anyway, that tools are easier to be included in the learning process of the learners. So the final step was to recognize and to give the opportunity to the learners to validate what they had been doing, even if it had been done outside the formal setting of our universities. So these were the starting questions. And this is how we worked. So in an Erasmus Plus project, there are steps to be followed. And I would like to remind, I mean, for us who have been going through these steps, but also for people who would like to maybe to go into such a project, we had 2 learning, training, teaching activity sessions, which were very important because we could confront our first developments to real usage. How did teachers react to our first developments? This was in Spain in December. How do students react when we offer our new tools? There was an intensive program that was led in Romania, in UBB, and where we learned a lot because it was a recent one, and we have nearly developed all our tools. So we have already a first approach to usage. And there were 2 multiplier events in September in a European conference where we sort of tested our hypothesis. And now here we are happy to be here for the final multiplier event, which means we are addressing the Die4U community, but beyond the community, because what has been done, as I was saying, hopefully is not done just for the project, but will be open. It is open. It will be open to all universities, and this is a way to introduce and to present what we have done. We have developed our project in 4 steps, 4 intellectual outputs. This was the key word, intellectual output, IO, which were shared between partners, 2 partners per IO. First one, identify the types of practice that have developed. Second one, how could we include other tools for language learning, testing virtual reality and gamification, so that maybe we give more opportunities to learners to have new types of interaction that was maybe missing during this period. A guide for teachers, because of course we can't change or take into account different learners' practice if we don't take into account teachers' practice and if we don't prepare teachers for that. So a whole IO was dedicated to this. And finally, as I was telling you, how can we recognize that? How can we offer the students the possibility to have the activities done inside and outside university recognized in a lifelong prospect? To do that, we, of course, we had a look at what was already done, what existed, what are the trends we rely on. So our keywords, which are in the title of the project, were autonomy, informal, formal learning, and furthermore, motivation, reflection, metacognition, badges, etc. I'm going to go through it quickly. I think the first quote here illustrates, it gathers the whole all the questions we've raised. The learning process is triggered through learners' agency and leads the system beyond the classroom. Autonomous learners take advantage of the linguistic affordances in their environment. They also reflect about their learning and use effective learning strategies. We have the keywords autonomy, affordances in the environment, learning strategies that can be developed through the help of teachers. So even though the word teacher doesn't appear here, it is there because, of course, learners' agency and learners' development of autonomy can be guided and is guided by the teachers. So it involves social, affective, and cognitive factors. And this is also something that appeared in our first questionnaires, anxiety raised by online interactions, politeness. I'm just giving some keywords that will appear later when I will deal with the IOs. Attitude, expectations, needs, efforts. How do we recognize these efforts? So this theoretical framework has really inspired us for our reflection. Awareness, enhanced awareness of the interplay between different factors, okay? We need to make the learners aware that they are not learning just inside the classroom. They know that, but somehow when we ask them, how many languages do you speak? Well, usually they just mention the languages they have learned at school. And then we say, okay, are you ever going to a country for a holiday regularly? Don't you know anything about this language? Of course they do, but they don't consider it as valid as what they have learned during their classes. So this awareness means we will go towards plurilingualism and the recognition of partial competencies, but all this needs to be reinforced by the formal setting and recognized again. And building positive attitudes about the achievements and about their autonomy process. Other notions that needed to be clarified were the notions of formal and informal learning or non-formal learning. So just as a reminder to know what we're talking about, if the institution takes in charge the learning process, if there are structured goals, if there is intentional learning, we are in a formal setting. If there is none of this, it's informal. Means we are learning without even thinking that we were learning a language. Okay? Means we're in a discussion with foreign people, for example, and we are learning. but we didn't speak with these people with the goal of learning. And then we have a situation in between, which we can qualify as non-formal, which means we are going to use apps, for example, for language learning, but it's just by ourselves. We are not, so we are planning to learn, but there is no official recognition of this learning by an institution. This is non-formal. It would be easy if it was so simple. It's not. These categories are the starting point, but we see that in the lifelong learning process, and also in a word that Erstadt used and that we have used in the title of our project, in a life-wide learning prospect, which means we are learning throughout our life, but we are also learning on a single day throughout our day. We are learning in the morning when we're having breakfast and we're speaking with the waiter. We are learning when we interact with the taxi driver, etc. So just reminding my latest language activities, foreign language activities. And by the way, making me very humble because, when we are in a language where we don't speak the language at all, suddenly, although we know our learners, it's difficult for them learning a new language, we are confronted, and it's good for us to remember how hard it is sometimes. So in a lifelong prospect, in a life-wide perspective as well, the distinction between formal, non-formal, informal is not that simple. So we've been looking at different notions, and one of them that appeared also recently in my readings was about the interdependence of formal and informal activities, which means there is no, in fact, it's a continuum or it's mingled. And I like this notion of intraformal, which means there is a sort of mixture of all things, but we can decide that it's different. And we have also published, edited a special issue in a journal entitled Recherche en didactique des langues et des cultures, which was also how can we articulate formal and informal language learning. And the four parts were useful to try and classify the way we can deal with this question of informal versus, I wouldn't say versus anymore, formal plus and however we call it, informal learning. Another important issue is how do we develop the autonomy of the learner? So at Lille University, we have a website and a Moodle group where we have developed steps to accompany the learner in the autonomous learning process. So this has inspired some other choices, but it's not specifically part of the project, but there are steps. We need to know ourselves as a learner, and the teacher needs to know that these elements are important. So again, the tools that have been chosen and that have been indexed in the IOs somehow can be related to one of these questions. Thinking in action. Okay, we can plan our learning, but when we are facing the learning, we need to react quickly. We need to think in action. Which tools can we use? Which networks can we use? Which resources do we have? What is autonomy? Well, we need a whole seminar about that. And how can we develop some methodology to develop this autonomous process? Further on, I think it will be described in one of the IOs. We learn a lot from the learning journals of our learners if we use them. And I think it's a very useful tool for metacognition development, because here, these were the extracts we had at the beginning of the project. We have more afterwards. And if we ask learners about what did you do in real life? I mean, well, as if learning in the classroom was not real life. It is, but what do you do in informal situations? And when they become aware that they can identify a word, they can provoke a situation, then they become equipped in their real life and can develop language learning tools that will be useful. I'm going to go a little quicker so that we have time for discussion afterwards. And our final steps was inspired by micro-credential development that was tested with the blockchain technology, which means we have, I would say a virtual, but a link, something that the learner will keep all his life, that can prove that he has done something, that he has acquired. Here we have the example of the language certificates that is provided with this link via blockchain technology. Then we moved on to badges, and we'll show you different types of badges that can sort of testify, certify that something has been done, which is not included in the diploma, but which is extra to the diploma, but which is really valuable. And that can be added in the curriculum vitae, for example. Another element that I always have in mind when we build these resources is that we're not talking about a list of resources. And I like to rely on the theory of complexity to analyze the learning environment, because how do we relate bits and pieces so that they become, I mean, interoperational and complementary. As a reminder, Morin is of course, the thinker of complexity. To make it simple, the key sentence is that the result is more than the addition of the constitutive elements. There are emerging qualities and evolving qualities. We develop something, we add ingredients, and it becomes something different. And through time, it changes. I always give the idea of the recipe of the cake. If we put chocolate, eggs, sugar, and flour, these are the elements. We are not eating chocolate, flour, eggs, and whatever I said. We are eating a new cake, okay? And if we leave the cake for a few days, the taste changes, okay? Sorry, it's a very oversimplified image, but maybe it's a good illustration of how things mingle and evolve. So if we mix languages, autonomy, learning environment, technologies, all these become something different. We saw that during the pandemic. I mean, the learning, the whole learning situation, the whole vision we have of the learning situation has changed, and something has emerged. So how do we take that into account? I started from one of course, I'm referring to a model that I have applied for language centers, which is called Aladdin, where I involve learning. And I think we need to take into account 6 keywords, which are learning, which kind of theoretical trend do we refer to when we develop our resources, which is apprentissage, sorry, because Aladdin doesn't work in English, so I need to keep the French words. Which language do we want the learners to learn? Is it general English? Is it English for specific purposes? Is it French for university purposes, etc.? How do we develop autonomy? How do we build that in a learning environment, a dispositif? How do we relate to institution? It reminds us of the recognition of what has been done, and online learning or not. This was the starting point, but we've seen things changing. And now, if we are talking of the learning environment, we need to add that it's beyond the planned didactic setting. We go much further. It's outside the institution. So it's not enough to be recognized by the institution. And it's beyond online learning, because if we are participating to a CASTELLON or whatever we call that in France, I mean, we're learning, but it's not using tools, online tools. So we need to add elements, and the model at the origin, which was very centralized, has to open, and this is the image I'm trying to put here, that we need to go outside, we need to open, and at the same time, other arrows to say we need to go back to inside so that we recognize what has happened outside. This is the image of opening and reintroducing for validity of the process. So it's a complex situation. We can have this image of different planets. How do they relate? How do they influence each other? this is what we have been thinking about during these 2 years. I don't know why my slide doesn't. Oh, okay. So now I'm reaching the development of the intellectual outputs. I'm going to go as fast as possible so that I don't say everything that my colleagues would like to say. So the first IO was to provide a database on digital pedagogy for language learning mediation. And the starting point was a huge questionnaire, and where we realized that there was a significant difference between the level at the beginning and at the end, as I was telling you, and that new apps had been found, and that they needed to be recognized and identified. Also, the teachers were not necessarily referring to metacognitive strategies, so it was considered as useful to develop a toolkit for teachers that will be presented later on by my colleagues. I was also mentioning the fact that online is not always easy to deal with when we have to interact, and that there are communication-related anxiety and politeness problems to be tackled. So these were the key points that were identified, and because if we see here in the questionnaire, when the students or teachers were, it's in green, where there were a lot, feeling a lot of concern or anxiety. So we see that speaking and writing, of course, are the most anxiety raising concepts. The deliverables, I've made a list here. I'm not going to go into it because I know it will be presented later on. So as you can see, the items are the key notions that we had identified. I will let our colleagues present, and also with a very nice online book with the glossary of so many apps that we can discover and use as teachers. But I'm not going into it, just going through, teasing so that you feel like going through it later on. IO2 was dealing with developing virtual reality and gamification for inclusion and for facilitating interaction. So the objectives were to create a prototype of a virtual learning environment. So we need to redefine the VR question, and prototypes for online games, so that maybe the interaction could be dealt differently by the students, so that they could have maybe a sort of facilitated identity to interact online. So these were the goals, and there are 5 deliverables that my colleagues will present later on. So I'm just giving the titles. So we have 4 prototypes for games and 1 for virtual reality, and it has been tested, isn't it? Yeah? Sorry. Yeah, okay. So just going quickly, because I know you will show that, so just to make you feel like testing that. We see the different visuals, but I'm sure you will show more later on. IO3, the goal was to enhance multimodal language learning and teaching material to develop autonomy. So it's complementary to IO1. So also if we go through feedback, we needed to clearly identify what was more related to IO1, IO3, but at the end, the project is global. So the tools are complementary. The goal was to review the state of art of research and to analyze the use of digital technologies, identify these new pedagogical practices, and giving key ideas for integration of digital technology. So it has resulted into interactive mind map. I'm just showing the first image that we have, but it's interactive and it moves and it's very attractive. And I will let my colleagues present how you can go through this mind map. And there are many resources also that you can find there with a podcast, dynamic library, which will be updated regularly, interactive map to know where the people, the experts come from and talk from. So this is also very useful tools that have been gathered here. I will let my colleagues introduce that. And the final step with IO4, which is how do we recognize these activities that have been done maybe in the informal background or non-formal, and all of them maybe. So there were 4 tasks to be tackled. Well, first, determine the challenges, define which skills are useful and can be recognized. Because of course we can make a whole list, but not all are easy and not all are necessary. So we can't deal with everything. We needed to make some choices, design the badges and issue the first badges, which is our next step once the project will be over. To deal with the theoretical frameworks, I've already shown you the issue, the specialized issue. A book was also produced by one of our colleagues, MYKOLO, and all this is a result of all our discussions among all IO partners. To design the model, I'm going to go briefly through what is a badge. We need to know how it worked and what are the features that could be recognized. I will only focus now on 2 elements, which is that we considered that they were, I should have a second circle. We can have motivational badges, which are not officially, it will not be issued as a certificate at the end, but it can motivate our learners, as in apps, for example, that we know that it's a kind of gamification also. It's motivating. Okay, I will reach the next level. We have that in all our apps nowadays for walking, for running, whatever. We make more steps just to reach the next badge. I'm an easy player. I like to deal with that. And institutional recognition, which is not as easy because we need the institution to certify that. So it deals with language policy, country language policy as well. So this is another step. I'm not going to go into the details of the badges because there are a lot. So we have distinguished the motivational badges, which are the ones that you've just seen, and then the final ones that gather a certain number of micro badges. And these gold, silver, or bronze badges will be recognized eventually and certified by the universities. So how can it be done? It can be done through open badge tools that I will talk about a bit in my last part. Because, okay, we have developed IOs. At the beginning of the project, we have divided tasks, we have divided steps. But it goes against the systemic approach, the complexity approach, which means we are not just dividing bits and pieces. We now need to unify all this. We need to gather all this and to make it work all together. If it's just a list of resources, okay, it's useful, but I like the idea that we have a coherent communication between the different elements so that we reach a new final level that makes the whole thing coherent. So my final question is how to create a coherent global learning environment from this. So the requirements, it needs to be a user-friendly environment because otherwise we're not going to use it. It needs to be flexible, adaptive, interoperable because we need to take into account the different context of our partners. As you have seen, we are 8 countries, 8 laws, 8 language policies, 8 contexts, 8 needs, and we don't have one size fits all. We have proposals and we need to be able to take what is useful for each of us. Hopefully all of it, but if not, we need to take that into account. And even if as we are open there will be open resources to all partners. I mean, hopefully for people who would be interested in other universities, it needs to be flexible, but without losing coherence. So the questions were how to avoid having a simple list of items with IO deliverables, which is already, I mean, I can say, I don't know, I hope the European partners and the European Commission members that will evaluate our project are listening to me. I think we've reached our goals. We have our deliverables, and as you see from our original goals to the results, the job is done. But I would like to avoid having just a simple list of items. How can we integrate both learners and teachers so that there is a communication between these two users of the tools? How to take into account the learner's reflexive process, because we have provided tools that help, but how can it work eventually without having to go to different settings, etc. And how can we facilitate again the recognition of the process? So just as a synthesis, we started from informal and formal language teaching learning through gamification, developing autonomy, validation, different types of interaction, recognition of informal language learning, and last but not least, promoting inclusion, which was the original partnership that we had with a former project called Inclusiu. And it's important when we're dealing with inclusion, it's social inclusion, but it's also with students who need specific access to the online resources. They need to be adapted to visual aids or hearing aids, etc. So it's not just a list again. So we try to see how we can gather all this. So going back to the different steps, interacting differently, introducing informal and formal language learning, developing autonomy, you recognize all the steps, gamification, a database, several databases, recognition. How can we make the link between all these elements? So we have been inspired from a pre-existing tool, which was entitled Kalau database, which is a database where we offer resources. And what is, I think, maybe the key tool inside this database, because we see that we have different databases, different ways to index resources. This one is not better than the others, it's just one more way. I think the link can be made through the carnet bord that appears here in French, the learning journal, because in this learning journal, everything is automatically registered, and the learner can add a reflexive approach, and it will help making things automatic to provide the badges. Okay, so it has been adapted as a Dial4You database, which used the same tools originally, with different pages. Instead of having different departments within a university, now we have different universities, so there are different pages. So I'm giving you an example of the MALMO page, and all our partners can have a page. So again, we have a tool where everything is, and the universities will be able to choose and adapt to their local setting to choose which resources are useful for them. It's also through this database that we can earn a badge automatically. So for example, here we have tested some badges during, I was telling you, our LTTA2 in Romania. So once the students have done a certain number of hours or clicks or whatever, it can activate a badge. And if there are a certain number of badges, it will activate a final larger badge. It will be dealt with later on in details. This is done. Some of these badges are automatically created through the database. And then we need to make the link with Open Badge Factory or another tool. We'll see, still seeing which is the best one, but at the moment, this is what we're thinking about. And if it's on this database, it can be open to anyone. For example, there are pre-existing, have gone through Open Badge Factory for languages. I've seen two, for example, which is Je sais parler des langues étrangères, which is something which has been developed in the center of France. And you can use these badges, they're open, okay? So this is also a way to disseminate and to open to different publics. So as a conclusion, I think I need to reach the conclusion of my presentation. We have the database, we have different IOs and different tools. I've tried to gather more or less the different outputs, the different deliverables. But I think what is important for the sustainability of the project is that we have a double access. We have an access through the CALAO database, a mutualized database that can be enriched and continued with a continuing development, but also accesses through the tools which have been indexed. Because otherwise, this is the only way we can make the different elements being updated. Also, each partner, it's normal, has some preferences. So we can, I think this double entrance is the key solution for having the whole thing all gathered, but allowing also an entrance through the different items that have been developed. And each university which has developed one of these remains in charge of updating it, which is also a way to make it sustainable, because we know that in these types of digital resources, it becomes very quickly obsolete if we don't continue developing and updating. So our keywords at the beginning of the project, we had identified 5 items. Share, I think we've shared a lot. We've shared experiences, we've shared doubts, we've shared problems. We've tried to design solutions, products, we have deliverables, we have collaborated. It has been, I think, a very fruitful collaboration with new partners and new colleagues. We have issued a certain number of official items, and now we're ready to disseminate, which is what we're starting today, but we will continue. We have already started, but of course this is the challenge now, is to continue to disseminate. So what are the prospects now that we are at a final stage? Well, I think we now need, of course, we have some products. We need to test them on a larger scale and on a long-term period. So the project is over, but hopefully not totally over, because now the project needs to be kept alive, and testing and using and comparing the way the resources are used will be a very important step to make them alive and to test. I mean, this is applied research. Continue interactions among members, maybe develop a new project, I don't know, this is with a question mark, and keep it open. This is very important. So I would like to thank everyone. I'll start with the IO and the Dial4You partners. Thank you to all of you who are here or who are online. I don't see you, but really sincerely thank you to all of you to have contributed to the project, because of course it's a teamwork. Thank you for playing the games at all moments, even when we had doubts whether we would go ahead, because just as a reminder, when we started, as I was telling you at the beginning, we thought the COVID was over. It was not. So our first 6 months, we couldn't meet in person. I think 6 months, yes, it started, yeah, even the first year. So we had to cancel our face-to-face first meeting. And we have really lived the difficulties of working online. We know how, and the first meeting where we met face-to-face, I think was really the starting point. So taking all this into account, I think I really need to thank everyone, and for creating a synergy among partners. As I was telling you, I don't like that to be a list of partners, but I think there are links among us, and Some have been reinforced because they were pre-existing, some have been created. And I think this is a side effect of the project, but which is a very important one as well. It's not just what we are delivering today. So really thank you everyone. And thank you for everyone for listening today. And I'm ready for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Any questions for the presenter?
I don't know if there are questions online or not.
And
Maybe I can stop sharing.
Yeah, we need to check. In the chat, no, but the chat, okay, the chat is empty.
So if you have any questions, you can use the chat, maybe it's easier. Or remarks. The partners can also want to add elements that I may have forgotten. I think someone is typing.
Mm-hmm. Ah, yeah, Annabelle is typing. Okay.
It's a long message.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so if nobody
we can go ahead.
I would like, I need you to comment, like, how do you see now after we have done all the work, everything, what are the prospects?
Yeah, I've put some, I've raised some. I mean, I think we need to discuss that, of course, among partners, but I think testing them next year is the first step. And maybe if we share the different tests and feedbacks, it's a first, because of course we have created them, we have tested them with the students, but it was a very, I mean, initial test. So I think we need now to use these resources, and of course, maybe changes need to be done, or at least see how people use it or use them or not, and why. Yeah. So this is an action research process, which is normal. So I would really like to go through this process, and maybe these first results will help us develop another project. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. I don't know if everyone wants to continue. I can't speak in the name of the partners, but I think we have started something. I don't think we have ended something. Yeah. So hopefully we will continue. Yeah.
We will continue, and maybe we will find additional time to participate.
Oh, well, I don't know. Yeah, it's a challenge to have a big group like this.
Okay, thank you so much, Anik.
Thank you.
And now I would like to invite our invited speaker.
It's okay. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah,
so
well, what I haven't said is that everything is in English at the moment, but as you will see, some resources deal with other languages. Plurilingual education, yes, we are 8 partners from 8 communities, language communities. Some will be translated, and as we have now a kind of model to know how to develop, we can go further. And of course, I hope these resources can be used for plurilingual education, although this is not necessarily the goal, that it's part of it. And so maybe this is the next question that we can deal with, include this element in the next steps. Okay, I'll let you continue with that.
So now I would like to invite our invited speaker, Guillermina Lobato Miranda, to give a talk on online learning environments.
Maybe I need some help.
Oh, yeah. So I do hope I can. Yes. Because
no. Because I must stop. No, I must stop. Share.
To share, we have the list to share.
Must open.
I think
Yeah,
so.
okay. So,
But I'm sharing the screen now.
yes, but I know I need not. No,
Okay. Mhm.
before, where is, okay,
Mhm.
before I must share. Share. Where is Teams? Here. But I must leave.
No, I think maybe you need to share here. And you choose either window
yes,
or the
yes.
whole. Yeah.
No, yes, it's
Mhm.
okay. Close this. And now it's
Here, I think, yeah,
yes.
to make it like, like
Yes.
this.
No, I think
Let's ask the participants online.
Yes.
Is it okay? Can you see everything? Someone just shout out who can.
yes.
Anna, can you?
Everything.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have my notes here because my English is not so fluent like my colleague from France. But good morning. It is a pleasure to be here. I'm very grateful to Gather, is my colleague now and friend, to be here. And my lecture is, of course, entitled I can go online learning environments, application of instructional design principles, because I work with these things. My name is Guilhermina Lobato Miranda, but my international students call me Miranda. It's better. Is one of the characters of Sex and City. Yes, Miranda. It's easier. You have here one of my institutional emails. I have here. No, I cannot use the pointer. No. This pointer is a format. I can use the pointer, so it's difficult for me because I want to use the pointer from PowerPoint and I cannot see where is. No, here inside the PowerPoint I cannot find because no, sorry, but I am from Institute of Education Lisbon University, but I am a psychologist. And you have here one of my institutional emails if you want to contact me later. And here my site of my research group. It is composed of PhD students who have finished their works or are in different stages of development of their work. You have here our main articles in index journals, PhD reports, and also master dissertations. So I prepare a presentation with these 4 topics. First one, I will tell you briefly my opinion about the role of ICT, but I prefer the concept of digital technologies nowadays in the teaching and learning processes. The second topic is now universities and teachers can choose, they have the autonomy to choose 3 types of regimes of teaching: face-to-face or conventional teaching, e-learning or be-learning regimes. Next, in the third topic, I enter the core of my conference, how to organize and design, develop, implement and evaluate virtual learning environments using instructional design principles. And at least, but no less important, I will talk about learning objects and educational multimedia messages and how to design it according to main scientific theories about how we humans process and represent multimedia information. So let's begin with the first topic. What is my opinion about the role of digital technologies in the teaching and learning processes? I did my master degree in the 80s and my PhD in the 9th of 20th century and I used digital technologies to develop teaching and learning environment and to research them with experimental methodology. I use mainly experimental methodology. At that time, many researchers, teachers, and even opinion makers think or thought at that time, it's in the past, thought that technologies were going to revolutionize teaching, the way teachers teach and then students learn. But of course, it's a belief. It's not because technology has not that power to transform everything. But I think they are a valid tool to develop efficient teaching and learning strategies, and they contribute to reduce the info exclusion of more disadvantaged students and also some teachers, because there are teachers who are not inside, don't know how to use digital technologies to teach and to put students to learn. And with COVID, all around the world, most teachers need to use digital technologies. For them, it's very difficult. It's not distance education, it's remote emergency teaching. So the second topic, now each university and each professor is free to choose 3 types of teaching: face-to-face, e-learning, and be-learning. I do these 3 types of teaching, and I think I'm more free than before. And but for distance learning in an e-learning regime be efficient, teachers must know how to use digital technologies and mainly learning management systems. Could be like yours or more conventional learning management system like Moodle, Blackboard, and other learning management systems. Know how to develop digital research or learning objects. I prefer the concept of learning objects and multimedia messages. And know how to plan. For me, it's more important. How to plan courses and classes using the instructional design principles, or even a theory or model of instructional design. For me, e-learning should always be a specialized work carried out in a team. Sometimes it's a lonely work. I talk about it because I have the 2 kinds of experience. And the courses are much more efficient when you work in a team of specialists, instructional designers, it's my specialization, web designers, audio and video specialists. There are universities specialized in e-learning, other than the Open University, because Open University existed before, but which work for other universities and give full support to the design, development, and placement of courses online. This is the case of University of London worldwide. I have now a PhD student working inside this university. She's doing the PhD with me, and it's very interesting. She chose me because she wants to use the model that I use with my students. So I am a Portuguese woman, and the Portuguese is the 6th language more spoken in the world. Brazil, Angola, Timor, our ancient colonies all talk Portuguese, and there are a lot of Portuguese around the world, and they want to continue to study post-graduation studies. And my ambition is to create Lisbon University of Lisbon worldwide, to respond to the needs of these people who speak Portuguese. So before I enter my main core, I must make the difference between natural learning and learning through or by instruction, what my colleague called formal and informal. Psychologists now, there are a beautiful book, Cognitive Load Theory, and first chapter is about that. It's written by a philosopher, and he distinguished between natural learning and learning through instruction. And instructional design is about this learning by instruction, not natural learning. Natural learning, but I see that most of my colleagues, even my colleagues in university, don't distinguish these two kinds of learning. Natural learning is the result of primary biological knowledge, and learning by instruction produces secondary biological knowledge. In natural learning, most children and even adults have no difficulty because it's the result of many thousands of years of evolution of our species. It includes, I will give some examples. It includes learning the language in which the child is immersed. Because, for example, I have a granddaughter and is 1 year and a half, and it's 3 languages, Portuguese, Finnish, and English. And I think she will learn the 3 languages, of course. They don't need direct teaching. Includes also face recognition. The learning of the first emotional skills, and a strategy like this child in the left to solve problems by a strategy of trial and error. They don't need direct teaching. But there are another kind of teaching that is recent in the history of our species, and some children and even adults have difficulty to learn the knowledges associated with it. I will give some examples. Learning to read and write in our mother language. Learning mental calculation. Learning think logically. What Vygotsky in the beginning of 20th century called instrumental learning. And also the knowledge associated with each discipline field. And this kind is the core of instructional design. It's here that the methods and strategies of teaching are important. So, instructional design, and I will talk only in a distance, in an e-learning regime, because instructional design can be applied to face-to-face teaching. In a distance regime, when the teacher is planning his or her classes, she or he must change the focus of his or her attention from what am I going to teach to my students to what my students should learn. And this change in focus means that learning activities become the center of teaching and necessarily change the strategies and resources that the teachers use. For example, in my institution, 3 hours of face-to-face class is most common. It becomes, on average, a week or more of activities to be carried out by students. of course, with the support of the teacher. But everything is in place, and everything I will show after how to do this. At the heart of teaching are the activities or learning tasks that students must perform to learn. So we enter of the core of instructional design. Here we have a simple way of organizing a course. For example, my course of learning and technologies in a master degree completely at distance, and we have students all around the world that speak Portuguese, but sometimes they have things in English. You must organize in modules. The models are interrelated, of course. Each model is composed of lessons of class, and each class is supporting in learning objects. It's the way very simple to organize the instruction. But inside the instructional design, we have two main approaches: the systemic approach and the instructional or pedagogical approach. Inside the instructional approach, there are more than 64 models, but the well-known is ADI model. ADI, it stands for analysis, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. In the design phase, aims to know the needs of the students and assess their prior knowledge, because we know now that the prior knowledge is very important to design what happened after. And now you have a lot of techniques to do so. After that, you must design the course and take into account the needs and the prior knowledges of the students. In the development phase, you must think in all activities, learning activities that students must do to learn, and also the learning objects that support the activities. And you must also test the system. If everything is in place, there are no problems to find resource, the students easily can find everything in place and everything goes well. And after you implement near your students. And assessment or evaluations is present in each phase. Of course, at the end, you must do summative evaluation. The pedagogical models for complex learning, because most of school learning is complex, not complicated. Complex is different. Must tell us what quality instruction should be like. And for me and for other researchers, quality means have visible and positive effects and measurable effects on student learning. It's not enough to say that it's very good, that you must measure the effects. And nowadays you have three great categories of model: instructivist, cognitivist, and constructivist. The instructivist models, I highlighted the first one, the first instruction design model by Skinner, the program teaching, and also the mastery learning by Benjamin Bloom. In cognitivist models, I highlighted the cumulative learning by Gagné, called also conditions theory of learning, and subsumption theory by David Oswald, and also the 4CID model, 4 components instructional design model by Van Marian Bauer. And I work mostly with these models, cognitivist models. And you have also the constructivist models, and psychologists prefer cognitivist models. But in education, I realized that most teachers prefer constructivist models, like guided discovery learning by Bloom, problem and project-based learning, inquiry-based learning. But we know now that as a result of experimental research, that constructivist models are more suitable for students who already have a lot of prior knowledge about the topic, not for students that are in the beginning of cognitivist models are considered the most performant, especially for those who are starting out in a given learning process. Instructivist models are very suitable for struggling students and for anyone who needs to automate mindsets and practice. Practice, like having outside. Practice makes perfect. So, because I work mostly with these cognitivist models, because most of my students are in beginning of studies a subject, I will talk briefly about, because each model is very complex. You must study it really hard. But Robert Gagne is a psychologist, and the theory is conditions of learning. And if you are planning a lesson or a course, you must take into account these 9 levels. The first level, without attention, focused attention, there are no learning. So the teacher must think how to gain attention of the students, how to do it. In my class, I never began without gaining the attention of the students. So, because without attention, it is a kind of attention, not like I'm doing, is a focused attention. What are in parentheses is the mental activity of the student. The student receptive to the information. After the teacher or the instructional designer must inform learners about the objectives, goals, performance goals. At the end of this class or at the end of this course, you must know this, and this. You must know how to do this, and this. You understand? And what in the mind of the learner, he creates an expectancy. It's very important. I will be able to reach the objectives or not. And it's why in the third place level, the teacher must stimulate recall of the prior knowledge. And there are a lot of techniques to do so. Only in the 4th level, teacher presents the stimulus of the class like I'm doing here. And there are different ways to do so, not only lectures. No, because nowadays, you know, there are different strategies to teach, not only lectures. In the 5th level, teacher must give what Gagne calls semantic encoding, because most students have a superficial encoding. And they must train the students to do semantic encoding. There are also strategies to do so. And in the 6th level, they must list the performance, of course, to see what the students have learned. Right, answer to a question, made a quiz, there are many things. And it gives feedback, corrective and analytical or cognitive feedback, because feedback is very, very important to learn. You know nowadays that is one of the most important things in learning, prior knowledge and analytical feedback. And after, in the level 8, assessing performance. Evaluation, summative evaluation. But the teacher, because psychologists think that you must transfer the knowledge you learn in a situation to other situations. If you want the students learn to generalize and to transfer, you must give exercise and practice, practice and practice. Another cognitive model that is important for language is Asbel instructional theory, subsumption theory, is concerned, is a very interesting but complex theory, with how individuals learn large amount of learning material from verbal and textual presentation, from reading and from listening. The concept of meaningful learning is developed by Usbel. And in their book, his books, he explained how to organize this kind of learning, verbal from text and from lectures, and the teacher how to do this very well. And the last model I will take very briefly is the four-component instructional design model. You have here in the left, in the top, the learning tasks is the center of the model, and the learning tasks are these. I need a pointer. Where is the pointer? Because it's okay. Are these circles is the tasks? The learning tasks are the center of the model, and they are organized in classes. The first class has 3 learning tasks. The second class are 4 learning tasks, and they are in a sequence. The first are the beginning of what the students must learn, and the second are more difficult, and so on. But even inside a category of tasks, at the beginning, the teacher or the system, because with my students, we made this in simulation environments, not in only in face-to-face or not only in simulation environments, digital simulation environments. The first task, the teacher or the digital agent give a lot of support to students to do the task, the first task, and after gradually without support. So the task is the way they are organized. But you have also the supportive information is in the here in the supportive is what normally you call theory. And the theory is organized not in general, but the theory that helps students to solve this the tasks that are in one category. Is this L, gray L. And these, when students need this information to solve the problem or the task, they have the theory associated. It can be a case study, can be a text to explain how to solve the problem, can be a specialist to solve the problem. So after you have the procedural information or just-in-time information that gives corrective information to student feedback, corrective feedback. When the student is this black, this black rectangle with an arrow for each task. Student is trying to solve one task and he or she makes a mistake. And immediately you have feedback, corrective feedback. It's very important. Normally, with these three elements, most of the students learn what is important to learn. But sometimes you need to practice, and the model have part task practice associated with each category of class of tasks. It's a very complex model, but very important. They use mainly in to train doctors, medicine, aircraft, yes, but now we use also in higher education and also in basic and secondary education. I have been working with this model with some of my PhD students to teach computer science, to teach geometry, to teach biology, and we have published in index journals Key 1 and Key 2, and iGlobal invited me to do this book, and I did it, and the first edition is in 2021, is now indexed in PsychoInfo, and and you have here the two parts. The first part is the foundation of instructional design, theories and models of instructional design, and second part are the empirical results, experimental results of our research with the 4CID model. I think it's in a book format, in paper format. You have here the link, you can also only buy one chapter. So I have time, or I must go further?
The time is right. We can give
more. So
no, we can give like a minute or two.
Okay, so I go.
Question.
Yes, so I go fast because I said before that the activities are supporting learning objects. The first characteristic of a learning object is granularity. The granularity, the smaller the object, and it's very important because the smaller objects are can be reusable and recombined in different tasks. Do you understand? For example, you have a text, you have a painting, you have an image, is not a learning object, it's an information object. To transform a learning object, an information object in a learning object, you must, that's reusable, you must have three characteristics. You must formulate learning objectives. You must have activities that students must do with this information object, and you have some kind of evaluation. For example, how to transform a painting for you is very important. I love so much the Impressionist painting, and this is the first painting by Claude Monet, and found the Impressionist movement. And if I'm a teaching of art history, and I want that this information object transform in a learning object, I must formulate some objectives that students must achieve. At the end of doing all the activities that I prepare for you, you must make a small biography of Claude Monet and the principal characteristics of this movement, Impressionist movement, and so on. The activities you go to search information in this and this site about Claude Monet and other Impressionist paintings, and so on. And after I made a quiz, for example, to see if the students learn something. Here, how to transform a text in a learning object. Now I have no time because learning objects must respect the way humans process visual and textual information. And nowadays we have two main theories made by two great psychologists, and they are alive, they continue to research, and there are two. Here you have Richard Meyer for Santa Barbara University in the United States of America, and he found the cognitive theory of multimedia learning. Multimedia is at least presentation of words, written and narrated, like I'm here, and image in movement, in motion, or still in a video of a film. Multimedia learning is building mental representations from presented image and words. And what interests me is multimedia instruction, how to present words and pictures with the intention to promote learning. It's like other scientific theories, it has 3 assumptions. You have here the assumption in a figure, multimedia presentation, how our architecture, cognitive architecture process this kind of information, how we relate this new information with the prior knowledge, and how we put this information in schemas in long-term memory. Another theory, I'm going very fast, is the cognitive load theory by Sandler and by Sweller, and they found that there are 3 types of cognitive load. Intrinsic is the amount of effort associated with the topic, and there are topics that are more complex than others. The extraneous cognitive load. And German is because these 3 kinds of cognitive load are cumulative. So the results of this research, there are a very interesting book in 3rd edition, is Cambridge Handbook of Multimedia Learning. We have a lot of everything you want to know about this. My students must know this book very well. And at the moment, you have 14 principles studied and tested by these 2 theories. Test experimentally, not only by words. The first principle is that people usually, not always, but usually learn more deeply from words and pictures rather words alone. But if only if is the condition, you have here, for example, the drawing principle. I choose only 3 principles, but the drawing principle I use with my students. Yes, no, after you. The special split attention effect is this is mostly for teach with verbal text, language teacher. This for teachers, mathematics and geometry teachers. Here it's a principle that applies to any content. Here the way how to solve problems. And I must explain better, but I have no time, so thank you for your attention. And excuse my English.
Because we went a little bit into our coffee break, but if someone has like an urgent burning question, okay, one question could be asked. Okay. Yes. So yes, please.
No, you went. Oh yeah, you went. Yeah.
But you need to put.
Yeah.
It was just interest and invitation, because as you may have guessed, with our further tests, it would be very interesting to cross your approach. I mean, the different theoretical aspects, and see which one would be more applicable to our results. Yeah. So, well, I mean, we need to discuss later on, but I find it very useful.
But now there are no a good model. But for me, the 4CID model is the better, the framework for CID model, because you can adapt to different kinds of students. The students, there are a lot of experience, and students who have less experience. You can build the task, the learning task and learning object coordinating to, they have a book very good and the site that 10 steps for complex learning. They explain all the steps to organize course. They are very good. They are from Netherlands now they have another name. Países Baixos.
Netherlands?
Netherlands? No, they have in
Holland? No, it was,
No.
okay.
Okay,
Thank you,
That
thank
will-
you.
thank you.
Okay, so let's stop here. We are going to have a coffee break. Now it's about 10 minutes. Hopefully we will manage. So I invite everybody to go downstairs to the second floor, where there is the room with the coffee, and then after coffee break, we will start 12:40. Anna, we might be, I will see, but just be prepared that 5 minutes, we might need 5 minutes to invite everyone. But for now, it's a coffee break. Okay.
Okay, see you.
Yes. Yes, you can leave. Okay, now I need to go back. Where is my Teams?
Sorry.
So I will mute the room. Okay, so we a little bit had a longer coffee break, but let's continue with our conference. And now we have, let me see, the recording is going on. So now we have our second invited speaker, Anna Balula, who is going to present online, as she couldn't travel for this time. And her presentation is on drawing an agenda for collaborative online international learning. Anna Balula will explain herself better than me. Okay, so Anna, the floor is yours. You can, I guess, start sharing your presentation.
Yes, I will. So first of all, thank you so much for the invite. And I'm so happy to be here and it was wonderful to listen to our previous presentations. I wanted to say hello in voice also to Professor Guilhermina, and I'm so sorry for not being there, for not being able to be there. So in my presentation, the topic is drawing an agenda for collaborative online international learning. In fact, besides being a teacher at the University of Aveiro in Portugal, I'm also a researcher in the Research Center on Didactics and Technology in the Education of Trainers. And in this scope, I have been focusing on collaborative online international learning that I will refer to as COIL from now on. So this presentation divides into 4 parts. So starting with the conceptual framework in terms of concepts that are really key to this, then I'll move to some results from my research in terms of COIL practices in research, and I will draw some final considerations then. So starting with the conceptual framework, there are several approaches to internationalization. Of course, the one that most of us know is internationalization abroad, given that it is a geographical and physical relocation of students, teachers, and sometimes staff, as I have here already from Lithuania, for education. And it usually encompasses a multifaceted experiences abroad at the academic level, but also at the social and emotional level, as it was pointed out already in this conference. Besides, we also have internationalization at a distance, and in this case, it refers to all forms of education across borders, but everyone that is involved in this process is separated geographically, and usually the relation or the communication interaction is supported by technology, so technology enhanced. Just like Professor Guilhermina, I also prefer the technology enhanced or digitally enhanced learning. But what the internationalization approach that brings me here today is internationalization at home. So this concept is defined as a purposeful integration of international and intercultural dimensions into formal and informal curriculum within domestic learning environments. And here I want to stress the word purposeful, because it should not happen by chance or just because I have people from different countries or different nationalities together to develop a certain process, but it refers to the integration into the curriculum of systematic global, international, and intercultural learning processes. So it places intention into what we develop within the curriculum of our course units. And this is a very important concept in the sense that, and I stress again, it has, or it should be a systematic action. So these concepts are gaining momentum, especially because it directly relates to the LifeComp framework, which was defined by the European Union, and it focuses on our personal, social, and learning to learn competences. So we can easily understand that in our teaching and in the learning that we want our students to develop, besides our specific content, it is relevant for them to manage, for instance, their learning. And probably because of am I having problems with my sharing? No, everything's okay? Okay. So probably, as I was saying, with my managing, it is important for students to know how to manage their learning. And more with COVID, I don't know if you have the same experience, but it is hard to tackle planning, organizing, monitoring and reviewing, because our lives are not only face-to-face, but have moved online at so many different levels. Nevertheless, this is deeply related to self-regulation, the ability that we have in our teaching and learning processes to develop awareness and the management of emotions, thoughts, but also behavior. And these are directly interconnected with the social competences that European Union highlights, namely empathy, communication, and collaboration. So these are the 9 competences that are quite relevant for the internationalization of the curriculum and directly contribute to the European Union's Sustainable Development Goals, number 4, quality education, as well as number 10, reduced inequalities. As to the former, the internalization of the curriculum actually promotes a culture of global citizenship based on cultural diversity and the intentional contact that is established between cultures. But it also, because it is technology enhanced, and sometimes it translates to online communications, it reduces inequalities, given that it ensures that most participants are not left out because of, for instance, they are physically impaired or they have financial constraints and therefore they cannot visit other countries or go abroad, just like myself today. So in this scope, and taking into account these concepts, we have collaborative online international learning. And as to this context, it is important to understand and to weigh every single word that composes this complex term. And starting with the C, that stands for collaboration, the European Union also defines it as engaging in group activities or teamwork, recognizing and respecting others. And this is obviously interconnected with the value of positive interdependence among those that are working together, but also with individual accountability, because learners are asked to be individually accountable for their own learning, but also for the learning of others, and also simultaneous interaction, given that the interaction between them is mandatory. It is not something that they can work around. Moving to the O, as in online, of course, the digitally enhanced environment brings dimensions that we have to take into account, namely in terms of interaction and technology. In our instructional designs, as Professor Guilhermina Miranda pointed out, not only we have to consider if the activities that we design are more individual or social in terms of interaction, but also have to take into account the technological know-how that participants have. In this account, we also can consider the DISCOMP EDU framework that establishes several levels of digital awareness, from newcomer to pioneer. So newcomer, that's a person that uses technology to convey information, to share information, and the pioneer that actually innovates through technology, or even technology itself, by creating innovative contexts and activities. So last but not least, international learning. International learning, in this case, this is the facet that is more directly interlinked with global citizenship, given that it allows to develop cultural awareness. And when I refer to cultural awareness, of course, I'm referring to not only linguistic, but social and so many other facets that define the word culture. And in this scope, intercultural communication assumes a key role in the development of the principles that are directly related to global citizenship, empowering students or learners, but also teachers and other stakeholders that can be external stakeholders that are brought into the learning process, and empower them to be active players in this setting. And this is what COIL encompasses. And this is why through its dialogical interaction and co-responsibility to the development of digital competence and also global citizenship, it promotes, or it is a prime concept for developing active learning, what is called by several authors as active learning. Of course, learning itself is active by definition. Nevertheless, I do think that the adjective active here tries to stress that learners do have a significant role in their own learning process and the learning process of others. So, and this leads us to how these practices of developing COIL projects appear and are represented in research. a work that I developed last year, that it was first public the 1st of January this year, 2023 actually, divides what practitioners have somehow reflected in research into 4 different clusters. Being the first one education and the stronger one, but the others that are equally important: group work, learning activity, and internationalization. It is, in fact, somehow, I was listening to the previous presentations, and somehow it brings together several dots that were pointed out in the previous presentations. So, in what concerns the first one, education, this cluster underlines the opportunity that it brings to intercultural communication. And if I want you to call your attention for this area in particular, when we have intercultural competence, challenge, and practice, because these are some of the commonalities, some of the elements that are common to the 3 clusters, to the 4 clusters that we'll see next. But focusing still on the education cluster, it brings together the concepts of practice and the challenges it poses, not only in terms of the use of digital technology that is always evolving at a very fast pace, but also in terms of the implementation of pedagogical approaches to try to engage students in learning. Student engagement is deeply connected with student agency and how they assume that they are key players in the learning process. Then we also have the concept of effort, and several researchers point out that it is quite an effort to bring the global classroom into domestic settings. And that is especially because of barriers that directly connect with the pedagogical approaches that are being used. Nevertheless, they also point out that COIL can stand out as an opportunity to guarantee access to more, not to everyone, unfortunately, but to more students that usually international learning experience reaches. And it is based on peer international collaboration, and it adds value in terms of the diversity of elements and people that we bring to the learning process. So this was in terms of the first cluster. The second cluster, even though it doesn't have as much preeminence as the first one, the second one stresses virtual collaboration at the global level and its implications and limitations. Especially in this case, it is quite the language competence is quite relevant, especially because if these projects of collaborative online international learning are with countries that have somehow a very different language, and students do not feel comfortable with a common language, then sometimes it raises some constraints. But also in terms of technical issues, time management, that usually is a key element for conflict management. To have different time zones often stands as a problem that is not always easy to overcome. One of my last COIL projects was with Brazil. for instance, and it was there, well, 8 hours later than it was in Portugal, and sometimes by working in groups with different time zones, it is not easy to manage. So in the node challenge, the node challenge also interlinks with the node intercultural competence, underlining the complexity of defining activities that clearly address the development of this competence. In these projects, one of the elements that is clearly identified, even though teachers and students clearly identified that it was interesting, challenging, mind-broadening to interact with people from different countries, it is not common yet to have a full assessment of the impact of developing these projects with students. That is to say, to measure the results at the individual level and at the social level of these projects. And this is something that should be in one of our concerns in, well, a short-term future. Regarding cluster number 3, and this directly interacts or directly relates with instructional design that we just heard, has to do with the learning experience. And that is definitely the strongest node, some of the most important concerns. But it also relates to the preparation and how data is collected after the learning process occurs. So even though we should collect data that would give us hints as to how or what we should value in terms of instructional design, and the models that were just presented are a nice way to start. The truth is that we should also relate this preparation with how we are developing this intercultural awareness and the global citizenship competence, and try to measure its impact in education. The fourth and last cluster is internationalization, and this directly relates with the learning environments that we create, that we develop through, for instance, the gamification, just like Dr. Anek presented in the first presentation, but also with how globalization and collaborative learning is designed in the interaction with the technology. And this is probably what underlines the necessity of thinking digital platforms and digital environments in a way that it allows for effective data collection of the results of COIL projects. So as to final considerations, and from a perspective point of view, within the 4 key clusters that were identified, so education, group work, learning activity or learning design, and internationalization, what seems to be key is that the challenges of COIL practice regarding learning engagement are more and more relevant, and they should be considered in the learning design. On the other hand, the language competence in plurilingual communication can also stand as both a challenge, but also an opportunity, because as mentioned before, when contacting with other nationalities, we have the chance not only to practice our lingua franca, but also to be aware of the dynamics of other languages. Then, as to the third cluster, the role of teaching content in activity design is more and more relevant. One of the questions that I left in our chat, unfortunately, it was not read, but it was exactly, should the questions, what do I want our learners to learn, be not in the center of face-to-face and hybrid teaching? Because given that our face-to-face teaching is more and more technology enhanced, maybe we should also place the question in terms of what we want our students to learn rather than what we want to teach. And then last but not least, the development of online international learning environments should, of course, cope with this need to develop global citizenship competences and focusing on the value of being in internationally, digitally enhanced contexts. And that's it. Looking at my clock, I still have 4 minutes, but I would leave it to questions. Or
thank you, Anna, so much. Yeah, in a way you still have, but those minutes were eaten by the coffee break, but it's okay. I think, yeah, still people might have questions, so let's allow the audience to give questions, okay? Diana.
You were thinking about, you were having some kind of recommendation about thinking about methods to collect results, to evaluate internationalization at home, if I get it correct. And do you have already experimented some of them, or are there best practices for doing this? Let's say I'm asking because we had in the DAFU project, while we were testing, let's say, the VR environment, we some kind of developed a procedure, a very, very simple one, using also techniques of social sciences and so on. But I was wondering whether you have tested something similar, or whether there are specific methods that can be used to test the level of internationalization at home and the quality of it. Yes.
So thank you for your question. I can answer, right? I'm just looking at the blank.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, please, Anna. I just switched off. But okay, yeah. Yes,
sorry.
Please, we are listening.
I missed your laugh, Giedre. That's why I asked this. I really do. In fact, the way that COIL data are being collected is diverse. It depends actually on the researcher's focus. And what I do think, even though it is my personal opinion, it is as hard as, it is hard to collect data in face-to-face regular learning, because there are so many levels that we can address. In collaborative online learning, at the moment, from my research and my own practice, the kind of data that we collect is more focused on the students' perceptions and on the teachers' perceptions, both teachers, because it involves teachers from several countries. Well, my last one involved 3 different countries. But what I really do think is that we should, or we could, create a multidisciplinary team that could actually bring together so many levels of data collection. In fact, there are layers that in these 4 clusters are somehow, we can find hints of layers that could be addressed. Nevertheless, at the moment, as far as I know, there is not a comprehensive tool that can actually address not only the intercultural communication level, but also the plurilingual competence development level, and also other levels related with the, digital technology, group work, conflict management or time management, and other transversal competencies, as I presented in the beginning, in the scope of LifeComp, for instance. And I do think that there is a place to work, bringing together how we can evaluate those 9 competences in a dynamic but agile way, because I do think that the frameworks are still quite complex for one teacher to apply them all, trying to collect data as to several of these 9 competencies. But thank you for your question.
Thank you, Anna, so much for answering the question. And I will take, how to say, the lead, not to allow any more questions, because it's time for a demonstration of the intellectual outputs. And yeah, Veronica is already prepared. And but before Veronica starts, I need to invite my other colleagues to, because I invited my colleague. Thank you, Anna, so much. Could you please, girls, also try to put your presentations before Veronica starts, okay? Here. Yeah.
We also have film clips.
Good afternoon, everyone. After the lunch break, my colleagues and I are going to present to you the 4 intellectual outputs that Professor Rivon mentioned throughout her talk, the beginning of today. My name is Veronica Mikla, and I represent thank you, the Babeș-Bolyai University in Cluj-Napoca, Romania. And the intellectual output that I'm going to present to you is called Database on both formal and informal digital pedagogy content for language learning mediation. Because context is always very important, I just want to provide a slice of it. This I/O is just one part of the whole, and the 4 intellectual outputs intertwine into what the Dial4U project wants to bring as an outcome. It's coming to a close in May. I'm going to need approximately 15 minutes, and oops, sorry. I forgot that I am here. I stand here alone, but I actually have 6 colleagues that are in this team. You can see their names there. It really was a team effort. And throughout this project, starting with thinking about how we could bring those questionnaires to the project stakeholders and putting it into practical, hands-on content points. All of us have worked together. Our co-leader is MREU, our host university, and the universities, the 2 universities have tried to, and they have, we believe, completed the IO1 by collaborating on this input. This is my university. I wanted you to just get a glimpse of it. We got to see it when we were in Cluj in March for language training, LTTA 2. And these are my colleagues. The happy picture, the group picture has been taken, was taken in Spain right after LTTA 1. Anca, the one in top right-hand corner, is our, you know, she's the dynamo in terms of administrative things. Then we've got Adina Corna over here. She is our coordinator. And this is our wizard. Ioana knows everything there is to know about technologically enhanced communication and tools. We've got Alexandra here, who has been in charge of putting together the toolkit that we're going to, the glossary that we're going to show you in a minute. We've got Anca here, Anca Hopurtian, who has been in charge of putting together the information under the metacognition toolkit. This is me. I deal with the relational part, with politeness, pragmatic politeness, and how it relates into effective communication. And yes, these are the phases. I'm going to hand it over very quickly to Laura, who is going to introduce the MREU team. Maybe that you should be able to use it.
So it's my responsibility to introduce the team of MYKOLO University, whom the project partners have met on different occasions, but mostly for the students. It's myself, Laura Tomashulina, who is an associate professor at the Institute of Humanities. Our coordinator and leader was Professor Giedrė Valūnaitė Oleškevičienė, also professor at the Institute of Humanities, and currently also vice dean at the Faculty of
management, I believe.
Thank you.
Also, the project would allow us to expand the team of collaborators on occasions and different tasks, and we involve there Professor DILANG23, Professor Regina Chulagiene in consulting and working out different results, particularly in the part of the project and we're dealing on the producing of the questionnaire as a project. And part of the CALAO material, and also Dr. Atlas, who also participated at the start of the project in visionizing all the activities, and also contributed to this conference.
Thank you. What we had in common was the fact that we have research interests that were in tune with the project, and we have tried to use the expertise we have had to deliver. We call it the IO1 deliverable package, and this is why I'm here. Some of the aims of this particular package would be to present a structured overview of tools and apps in the framework of specific and integrated language skills, which is difficult to do when you have a sea of apps and tools that are there to support foreign language instruction. So that was one of our aims. The second one was to provide an explanation, a comprehensive explanation, to explain it as a process and as applications that would work, how metacognitive strategies would be embedded in language mediation, and also how online face management or face work management would lend itself to foreign language instruction in technologically enhanced media. We also wanted to provide some templates for building digital teaching sequences, which I'm going to offer a glimpse of today. One of the aims that is not listed here, but is also important, would be to provide a warm, helpful approach to online academic instruction in a very sometimes cold and faceless environment. So these would be the aims. What we have tried to do was to use the deliverable package in such a way, or to construct it in such a way so that it is used by stakeholders through the CALAO database, which is a comprehensive database that has a lot of resources, starting from digital tools, didactic documents, and learning paths. If the students in this room do not know what CALAO is, you might want to ask questions from our Meadow University. It's a platform where, if given access into, you can work autonomously on various tasks, and it's worth having a look. The glossary of tools and apps that would be presented in the book creator, which I'm trying to show to you right now. I think you can see it. They are listed in a very organized way. They have been chosen specifically out, as I have called it before, the sea of info, the sea of apps and tools, in the sense that they are provided with a very thorough explanation, what type of suggested use there should be. For instance, this one, Answer Garden, if you do not know what it is, you will know how to use it. And then we have also provided hands-on information as to how it could be included in a foreign language instruction class. So this would be the glossary of tools and apps. I'm going to get back to it. We called it the book creator. So this is the first deliverable that we have been responsible for. Then we've got the metacognitive strategies toolkit and the politeness or face management toolkit that I'm going to get into more detail in a minute. And the teaching sequences are useful in terms of applications of all these three elements for classroom use. Whether you are an instructor or a student, you can use them in order to practice your foreign language skills. one important point is that all of these resources, all of these deliverables are accessible and they are open educational resources. At the end of our project, we can safely say that they are there to be used. I would like to insist a little bit on what type of categories of the resources we are referring to. Digital tools, didactic documents, and learning paths. A learning path is a track that the student can go through, covering various activities, including the teaching sequences I have just mentioned. And then at the end, why not be provided with a badge for communicative achievement within that level, CFR level. So the 100 resources that are there to access, and by there I mean the CALAO database, would be encouraging for students and learners to use, and even form an academic community that could collaborate on various tasks. We have also provided 15 didactic documents under the form of teaching sequences, 2 toolkits with associated handouts for instructors on the one hand and for learners on the other, digital escape rooms that have been also tested in LTTA2 in Cluj when we were there in March, and customized learning scenarios for different levels using the resources and tools that we have mentioned. I'm going to simply give you a practical glimpse into what we have just talked about. So there are 3 apps here, 3 apps and tools, Flipgrid, Voki, and AP Foundation. So what we have here is, for instance, practicing the speaking part, speaking skills, right? So we are given the skill, then the suggested use for each of these tools, which is very briefly provided and in a nutshell, but it's quite useful because you get to see what it covers, whether it's enhancing speaking skills or whether it's about how you use it in a student portfolio. The suggested use is quite important for us. And then you have the activity itself, which is described. And well, in this particular case, it would be about joining the calls, and the related language production would be on that. So all of these glimpses into the book creator are practical enough to create autonomous learning. They are creative, and they also are always associated with apps and electronic resources for students to use or for instructors to use. And they also have essential explanations. This is, for instance, for listening skills. I am told by Guido that we have to rush it up a little bit.
Otherwise, we won't be able to eat lunch.
We won't be. Well, that's quite a threat. So I may do it. Right. Okay, and I would have also spoken about the writing skills and the reading. The vocabulary skill tools I can't possibly skip, because I think that in terms of the amount of creativity that has been put here, we have to mention it. There is a lot of vocabulary enhancement work at all levels. And when I say this, I mean from A1, even minus A1 to C2. More or less the same strategy. You get to do certain tasks by putting your mind to use. Knowledge is power here at A1 and so on. So this would be the book creator. I'm going to quickly move over to the next part. Gamification and escape rooms and gamified apps are also representative for the book creator and for the deliverable package. It was really successful in the LTTA2 testing. It is successful because you get to work with your peers on solving tasks and problems that mimic real life. We have mentioned the metacognitive toolkit. I would like to remind you that this would be deliverable too. Metacognition is thinking about the way you think, thinking about your thinking patterns and how they can support learning. And the toolkit provides, on the one hand, information useful to learners. What I'm showing you right now is part of the toolkit for students under planning, monitoring, and self-evaluation. And it's interesting to see how students have reacted to such questions in terms of not having been aware what questions to ask. So I think that the project is quite effective in offering support to improve metacognition and metacognitive potential in students. Face work, there will be a paper later, a presentation later on that I will deliver exactly on this topic, so I'm going to detail it there. But politeness or pragmatic politeness, politeness in context means rapport management, relational management, the way one manages to transmit an image that is sustained, and to what extent this image, this self-image, is actually appreciated in the same way by the ones that listen to that input. So pragmatic politeness, or the politeness toolkit, really is connected to what the speaker right before me stated, social and emotional learning, and the extent to which we are capable to move towards more acknowledgement of what type of competencies we have to have an impact. So e-face in language instruction, what image do I want to project and why? Yes, I am projecting that e-face or e-self image, but how is it interpreted by the others? How can I improve that type of engagement? And then the reflective part, the self-assessment part, students are given step-by-step instructions as to how to assess their face work. Politeness highlights one's marked effort in interactions. This is important because if you do not make the effort, you do not get to interact in an engaging way. And that is really why, I don't know why it doesn't take me to the next one. It's probably protected. The politeness toolkit is, I would say, a unique selling point in giving the approaches to which, the approaches in which, and the approaches that you can use in order to have an impact in foreign language instruction, and not only. Under preparation, participation, and self-reflection, we have organized information so that it's also clear theoretically, but most importantly, practically. And pragmatic politeness has to be intentional on the part of instructors as well. So there is the need to train instructors also in terms of what this is and how it could impact the relational quality of our interactions. So what it provides would be, within the framework of social and emotional learning, this type of input, theoretical and practical, awareness of impact, the impact you have on others. And there's also a section under contextual and cultural sensitivity, because politeness is always impacted by culture and the reality of our context. I would like to conclude by restating the fact that this has been a team effort. This has been a team effort that has been possible due to the coordination of our LILLE University and all our project partners. It really isn't a cliche, or such projects do not happen outside collaboration. And I would like to conclude by saying that the innovative approach to digital pedagogy that we claim as an outcome in our mind is a reality. It provides a comprehensive pedagogical approach to teaching foreign languages in a technologically enhanced medium, computer mediated environments. It also supports learner autonomy and it empowers both learners and instructors. There is the supported use of accent tools. So you're not just thrown into teaching sequences, you are helped along the way to perform. And by using the glossary of accent tools, we think that students activate their digital cognition in a conscious way that leads to a better online presence and, more importantly, language proficiency that is applied to academic content. We have also been proud to create a community of practice, and therefore, at the end of this presentation, I would like to thank everyone for helping us throughout. It was difficult from questionnaire standpoint and then moving on through these stages. So the collaborative effort, I would like to end on stating that the collaborative effort on the part of language instructors who have recognized the challenges of creating a digital pedagogy framework is what has brought us here. And I think that we have tried to meet the needs, the emerging needs of both learners and instructors. Thank you. I think that we are all very pressed by time, but if there are any questions or any comments, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Maybe let's move on. And could I ask you, Danny and Teresa?
Of course, by comments.
I am the IO2 one. Okay, good.
You have seen nothing yet. All right. We might need some assistance with going back from, we have a click, not now, but going back from the YouTube clips that we need to. All right, so
let's see. But I think the screen is shared. If
Participants online can see. Let me see. Okay, I hope so.
all right. So we are IO2 team. My name is Teresa Tomasevic. I'm from MALMO University. With me, I have
Jenny Piatti from VIADRINA University, and in the public, Sylvie Bordeaux, also from the European University VIADRINA, and we're a part of a wider group based mainly in these two universities in Germany and in MALMO.
right. So shall we move on?
Yeah.
What do I do with the? Right. So we have produced 4 games for language learning and 1 virtual reality environment. And we will show you some test results from the virtual reality environment that we've gained. So the objectives with the testing of this environment, or the prototypes, was to assess the experience and usability of the VR environment in language teaching and learning. How was it experienced by teachers and students? Assessing perspectives for VR environment use in language teaching and learning. How could it be used? And finally, identifying potential further development and or improvement of the VR environment prototype. So we did this in 2 testing rounds within the Dial4U Consortium program, you could say, well, the project. So there was this learning and training teaching activity, I think LTTA means. One, it was a meeting in Castellón in Spain with language teachers. And then we had the same thing in Cluj in Romania with students. Sorry? Oh, don't worry. We assessed it with a general questionnaire. And then we also had focus groups. So it was individually and in groups, the testing and the answers.
And the setting for the testing was slightly different. With the language teachers, we had wired goggles, which means that we had this VR headset that was connected to a laptop, and then we had signals from a sender and a receiver. I really don't know the technical name of it, but it was some kind of, and some of you were there, so you know what I'm talking about. And that was kind of not to be crossed, because then the image would break. For the students, when we had the student testing round, we had more equipment, and they were more modern as well. So they were not wired to anything, and you could kind of move more freely. But overall, it was kind of the same setting. So I would like to show you two very short clips to show you that this VR environment, and I'll explain what they're about. So the virtual reality environment was created by two students from the Interaction Design program, master program at MALMO University. And the idea is there are two separate environments or scenes. In the first one, you walk around in the virtual environment and you see objects. You'll soon see how in nature, and then you click a button close to a specific object, and then you hear it pronounced, in this case in Swedish, and you can see it written, so you can repeat, and you can do it as many times as you wish. And then you can also touch the objects, throw them away, pour coffee, etc. That's the first one. That's where you where you gain your vocabulary. Then you move into the next virtual reality environment, and there you meet someone else and have a Pictionary session. So of the words that you just learned, you'll see very soon. Okay, we'll start with the first one. And what you will see on the big screen is the environment as they are shown in the VR headset. And you'll also see a small, like a clip of the one using the headset. Her name is Sophia, and she's one of the students creating that. It looks like you haven't started Firefox in a while. Copy paste the what into what?
The link from the slide into.
Okay, so could you please help me go back? This was what I meant with we'll need help to go back. Oh, for the PowerPoint. Is that what you meant? From that? Yeah. Okay, copy paste and put it where?
Easy to copy paste. Let me check.
I think you need to go back to
sorry.
to outside the.
Outside where?
There. Yeah. Okay.
And then we have
that's the one.
okay.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah. Just need to get rid.
Okay, thanks. Okay, this is where we are.
Yeah.
And can the sound be in? Okay, no need for that. So this is what she sees in the headset. Okay, so now you get a hang of how you gain the vocabulary, right? And then the next session is, and then you move on to the next room in the virtual reality environment. And there you meet someone else because she's on her own in this room. And then I'll try to do this. In the next environment. And this is where she meets, where you meet the other student, Tomasz, who has also created this environment. He now picks up a card, a virtual card, reads a word. This is his avatar, and that's Tomasz himself, and draws it. And Sophia is over here guessing. So they're speaking in Swedish. Neither of them is Swedish native. And now there is an opportunity to draw in 3D, which is also what he will do with a 3D gun. So this looks very easy, but the ones of you that tried this out know that it takes some time to do so. So I'll stop there and go back to the presentation. You've understood the.
I think it's important to understand that what you need is you see it bidimensional. But when you're inside the environment, this is really an immersive experience. So this is some kind of only giving a small idea of the experience itself. So it's like watching a cartoon and the difference between watching a cartoon and being in the cartoon.
And taking part of it. And the idea is that you gain the vocabulary in the first section, and then you practice that in a playful way. Now, we tested this on teachers and on students, and you might think that they would have different views of this, or at least we thought so maybe, but we were surprised.
So now coming to the first objective, assessing experience and usability of the VR environment in language teaching and learning. So how was the experience? We tried to compare the answers of the students and the teachers that we collected and try to some kind of summarize this into word clouds. And if you see and look at it, basically are the same kind of answers to the general question, what did you like most? It's a great learning experience. It's interactive, it's creative, it's modern, it's innovative, and there were a bunch of very positive and
interestingly enough, very common, let's say, adjectives that has been used to characterize their experience from both the teachers and the students. We also inquired on the challenges of using these kinds of environments, and we also found out that there was a strong convergence between the two of them, although of course students, they are more like let's say familiar with these kinds of technology and with digital technology, so they would be like, they would find maybe less difficulties, but the kinds of challenges that they identified were the same. So moving in a virtual and physical environment at the same time. Sometimes there were technological issues associated with accessibility, password, and as Teresa explained, signals interrupting. There is sometimes, especially for those who do not have had the experience so far, the longer learning curve. There were many parameters to take into account all at the same time, besides the learning, actually the learning activity. And of course, it takes time, and it takes some time to find one's way into the environment. So these were the main things that were has been identified by both students and teachers, with some kind of differences, attached a very high added value to the general use of these kinds of technology for language teaching. Slightly different. Okay, this is not immediately comparable, but I think the students were more like, let's say, I know, students were like more cautious, I would say, about the potentials of the use of such a technology, but all in all, there is some kind of convergence in how the students and teaching see the use of this virtual environment for teaching and learning. The second objective was assessing perspective for the VR environment. So how could it be used? How can you imagine to use it during lessons or during courses or in other occasions that it could be used?
Right, so I'll go really briefly. So the teachers were underlining the competence training, which is not odd at all. And they were talking about using it for role playing, reading comprehension, creative writing, storytelling, learning action verbs, trying to think of a better scenario kind of training. And then they also talked about escape rooms and dialogues. The students, on their hand, were talking about, they were underlining situation, relation, and interaction learning or training. Gaming, online meetings, interaction with native speakers in real time, culture of the language studied, and the classroom seminars activities. We had a few notes on the notions on the diversity and inclusion, the cultural education, the body movement for students who are not able, or learners who are not able to use their full body movement spectrum, diverse avatars, using it for school, government funding, animals, and all kinds of senses kind of could be enclosed in this conversation, dyslexia, etc. Physically restricted movement, and using an inclusive language as well. And also talking about social anxiety, students who feel uncomfortable being online or in real life could use these avatars. And then also different learning styles. Over to you.
So the third objective was identifying potential further developments or improvement for the VR environment prototype. So I would insist it is a prototype, and it was, let's say, the excuse to discuss about what is needed, how could be used, and what could be improved for future development. So it's a product, but it's not a finished product. It's, let's say, a product that helped us to understand better and to see what is needed in order to use the VR environment in a way that both students and teachers, you know, can profit most of it. And also, in this sense, talking about improvements, there was a strong convergence about students and the teachers. What would they like to see in an improved version of it? More real life situations. We saw this. We had the game, let's say, inside the natural environment, a forest, which was like a very Swedish kind of environment, but the idea was to enhance the opportunities and integrate this environment with additional environments that create real life situations, a restaurant, shopping, healthcare, and situation also where you can use specialized languages for also that is also useful in translation classes. They would also recommend, let's say, to integrate or to conceive the virtual environment in order to have different levels or to address different levels of language learning in the environment, to encourage small talk, but also topics, new topics, let's say, could be environmental issues, so more political topics. Also the students, they particularly underline the fact that this could be an important platform to connect with native speakers, let's say, outside the university environment. So it could be a platform in which they could communicate and interact in a, let's say, very immersive way with other students around the world. The voice recognition aspect would play a role, and also the idea that an online platform like Discord could be integrated in the VR environment in order to create a virtual reality community. So all in all, we found to a certain extent surprising. On the one hand, students and teachers look at the VR environment from a different perspective. From the teacher's point of view, it's more the pedagogical issue. The student's point of view is more, let's say, directed to their experience, to their learning experience, but also the physical experience, let's say. But all in all, they mentioned the same issues. And one important take from all these issues is that it would be important for both students and teachers that the universities would provide peculiar environments where these technologies can be used by students, and where there is some kind of more instruction and guidance from the side of the teachers. But how to do it, I mean, will probably be the object of a future project. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, let me see. Good. Okay, so while waiting for my colleagues to talk along, I realized that I need to and look at the program, and I realized that I need to make a kind of decision about time management. Because now it was a perfect finish, just now our lunch break starts. So I will need to ask IO3 and IO4 teams to wait for 30 minutes while we finish our lunch break, and to ask everybody to come back here for then 15 and 15 minutes to IO3 and IO4, and then we go into the sections. And I do hope that my colleagues who moderate the sections will be able to squeeze somehow the talks. And what is more, I would like to apologize, especially Barry Kavanak, who is in Japan, and for him it's night already coming. And I promised the person that I would do everything what I could, that Barry has the right time, not at midnight, to present. So we are going to be 30 minutes late, but I'm very sorry about that, Barry, but life is like that. Okay, so now lunch break in the same room where we had our coffee. 30 minutes exact, we are returning back here to listen to IO3 and IO4.